Hey guys, in this video we are going to learn about conditional statements in Java. Okay, so up until now we have been writing several lines of codes and every line executes one after another. But what if in my code I wanted to use certain condition, and if only the condition is true, then only I would execute some lines of code, and if it is false, then I would execute other lines of codes. So how do we actually do that? For example, let us say we are performing several operations on some numbers. For example, let us say we are performing several operations on a number n. What if at some point I only want to operate this number if this number, if n is greater than 0, that is if only the n is positive. So how do we actually write conditions in Java? So to, to do that, Java has provided us with conditional statements like if, else, and there are several others like ElseIf, and we also have some switch cases, but we aren't going to discuss that here. So we'll just stick to these three. Okay, so let us understand them one by one. So first of all, if. So if is the most basic conditional statement. So what if does is, inside this block of if, we actually specify some condition, and if this condition is true, then only the statements written inside this if block would execute. For example, if I say that if n is greater than 0, then only I want to run these lines of codes. And we can also have after this an optional else block. So this is not necessary, but we can have it. So what this does is that if this is not true, then only this block would run. Okay, so if we have certain situation where we want to have statements which run only when some condition is true and other statements which run when the condition is false, then we use if else block. So let us see how this actually works using a simple program. So I am going to do is I am going to take an example of a number is even or odd. So let me first declare a variable and let me just name it n, and I'm going to provide a value 10. So what I'm want to do is check if the number is even or odd. So to check if a number is even, what I can do is to check if the number is completely divisible by 2. So to check if a number is completely divisible by 2, what I can do is to check if the remainder when the number is divided by 2 is 0 or not. So as we know, if a number is even, so for example for 16, if it is divided by 2, the remainder would be 0, right? So that is why I want to check if n is divided by 2, then the remainder should be 0. Now how do I compare this to 0? So this would be equal to, this would be compared if we use this double equals operator. So what this does is actually compare the left side with the right side, and if both are equal it would return true, otherwise it would return false. So this single equals was used to assign a value, and this was used to check if the left side was equal to the right side. Now let us proceed. If the number is even, I am going to print, okay, so I am going to print even, otherwise I am going to print odd. So let me just copy this part, and I'm going to write the otherwise part in else block. So if this is not true, that is when the number is odd, I am going to print odd. And after that I can also write other statements. For example, let me just write here working. So the thing that we have to understand is that this statement which is outside the if else block would function independently of these two. So we don't have this statement doesn't depend on these two. So what would happen is that if the number is even, this one will execute. but after this would be skipped, and but this would run. So what I want to explain is that this would run always. So it doesn't depend on these two. So let us see what actually happens here. Since n is 10, so it should print even and it would print working. So this working is independent of these two. Now if I change n to 11, it is odd, so it would print odd and working. See, now what if I have two numbers, for example, let's say int n2. let me just give it a value 20. What if I want to compare it, like what if I want to check if which one is this greater and if they're equal at all? So let me just first check if the numbers are equal. So if n1 is equal to n2, if these are equal, I'm going to print equal. Okay. Else I have to check two other conditions, right? So what I am going to do is I am going to write another if else block inside this else block. So it is basically a nested if else, because there is another if else block inside the else block. So here we can write if n1 is greater than n2, I will print here, I will print greater, else I will print smaller. Okay, let's see if this works. So here n2 is greater than 11, so it should print smaller and working. No, now how this is working? So here it first check if n1 is greater than n2, n1 is equal to n2. It is not equal to, so it goes into this else block where it first checks this if else statement. If this is true, it would print this one and move out, but this is not true, right? So this else would execute and smaller would be printed. So if I change this to 20, what would happen is that it would print equal. Okay, and working. So this working is functioning independently of the if else block. So let's see. So it gives us equal. Now the next thing that we can do is, we are going to see another way of writing these. Okay, so the first thing would be I use a else if. So what else if is another conditional statement which actually allows us to make the code a bit simpler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this part. Let me just keep it, and I'm going to write here if else if, and here I'm going to write the greater than statement, and if this is true, I'm going to print greater. If this is not true, then I'm going to keep this else statement and this statement would be executed. So let me just first run it and then I'll explain it what is happening here. So what would happen here is that it would print equal. Yes, but if I increase this 25, it would print greater. Okay, so this should print us greater. Okay, so it gives us greater. So what is happening here is actually this if, first of all, this if gets executed. It check if n1 is equal to n2 or not. So if it is not equal to n2, it will proceed to the next statement, that is the else if. Now else if checks if n1 is greater than n2. So in this case n1 is greater than n2. So what would happen? It would print greater and this will move out of the if else if block. Okay, so this else would not get executed. So after it moves out of here and this statement gets printed. But if I decrease it, for example, if I make it 15, so it is neither equal nor it is greater, so it would print smaller. Okay, so it should print smaller and working. So this is how we get the output. So I hope you understood the concept, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.